You're live on News from Africa, Channel 405. This is Newsfeed, the AM edition. I'm Ayanda, Nyathi. Thank you very much for starting your day with us. So as we enter week 2 of the national lockdown, of course, we continue helping you make sense of everything you need to know around the coronavirus pandemic. This morning's no different. Zain, Semaar, who's the managing editor here at News from Africa, joins us to help us make sense of the significant developments, because a lot is happening at the same time. And in just a moment, we'll take a look at the newspapers, as we always do around this time of the morning. Zain, you've survived the first week of the lockdown. Here we are for week 2. I hope you well. How are we treating the story moving forward?
Thank you, Ayanda. So today we're focusing on the most important aspects, or arguably the most important aspects of the second phase of this lockdown, which includes mass screenings and testings. As we've seen over the weekend, in a lot of areas, especially KwaZulu-Natal, Gauteng and the Western Cape, where these mobile testing units and screening processes have begun in earnest. So this morning, our reporter in KZN, Karinda Jagmohan, will start from the St. Augustine's Hospital in Durban, where 11 healthcare workers were identified as COVID-19 positive. The health department making a huge call on people who had visited the hospital in the last month to actually come forward and provide themselves for testing. So a good place to start telling the story of tracing and testing from that hospital. From there, she'll move to Umlazi, where we've seen over the weekend, Umlazi being one of the townships where a test pilot project was started with mass screenings and testings. So 200 households in that township were identified. We'll give you an update about how that process went. You'll remember that throughout the country, I think it was in Yeovil, in Gauteng, and then in Alex, in Sujwetla, some residents were also tested. Yes. So we'll continue to bring you those updates. Also importantly, Takani Magwetse will be out today looking at certain mass gathering points still. We've seen last week a bit of flip-flopping and power dynamics being played out between the transport sector, the taxi industry, and Transport Minister Fikile Mbalula. So we'll give you an update again about compliance issues there, because the taxi industry remains a huge risk area in terms of its vulnerability for transmissions.
Absolutely. I'm more interested to find out how the regulations as we understand them now have been quote-unquote digested by the industry itself, especially the issue around masks, where I think there's still an incredible amount of uncertainty in terms of being able to procure the actual equipment for individuals and how you're meant to actually use it. For instance, can you use the same mask throughout the week? What happens to people who don't catch a taxi from the taxi rank itself, but actually, get onto the vehicle whilst it's on its route somewhere else? I mean, are they given masks as they enter? So, that regulation, I know, had a lot of people asking those critical questions.
Yes. Also, the regulations around informal traders, food traders, and taxi ranks were quite significant last week, simply because whilst government was attempting to show its compassion for those who are suffering the most as a result of this lockdown and trying to give them some kind of lifeline again, it does at the same time open up the possibility of those areas becoming areas of vulnerability again, because if you have Ms. Kumalo on the street selling her foodways, it could become a potential gathering point and meeting point. And then again, how do you police that kind of situation?
Absolutely. Let's take a look, if we can, at the newspapers this morning, Zain. We'll just glance over the front covers for you today. I'll start us off with the business day, and as expected, they're giving us an economic spin to the pandemic. We understand about R1 billion could be procured by the South African government from the New Development Bank. This is significant because the New Development Bank, by the way, is otherwise known as the BRICS Bank, and we're part of the BRICS formation, along with Brazil, Russia, China, and India. And, of those countries, South Africa and I think one other country are the only two in junk status, which is significant because it's going to affect, our ability to sort of borrow money and be able to pay it back eventually. So that's certainly worth keeping a close eye on.
Just following into that story nicely is also the Monetary Policy Review Committee is expected to announce its statement today. Yes. A lot of people expecting a financial stimulus package in the face of COVID-19, also in the face of our downgrade not so long ago by Moody's. So that's an important story to watch. Also here on Newsroom Africa, we'll be bringing you Toko Didiza, Land Affairs and Agriculture Minister. She'll be doing an update on a 1.2 billion rand intervention and giving details to that intervention meant for the agricultural sector.
Oh, absolutely worth keeping an eye
On the Sowetan, Ayanda, one of my favorite stories for the weekend was a couple in Mpangeni, near close to Richards Bay. Actually, the police shutting down the entire ceremony, arresting the bride, groom, and the priest, the pastor who conducted the service.
Yeah, no, this kind of getaway I don't think they imagined when they were getting married, but it's an important message.
It's an important message.
It sends a very clear message about whether or not we're playing when we speak about the lockdown regulations and what you can and can't do. It comes as no surprise that the Star is also pretty much going with the same image this morning. The bride sort of being gently ushered into a faraway van of the Mpangani police station. And, you know, but they're also speaking about how businesses are going to be forced during this lockdown period to really go back to the drawing board in very significant ways. So experts are being quoted here saying everything you had planned as a business until now needs to be thrown out. You know, we are literally at that stage now where even your plans for 2021 have really been compromised, and nobody would have been able to predict this, and I guess we can take some kind of comfort from that.
So, the big question I think that's on everybody's mind that the Sowetan got right this morning is the lockdown bearing fruit. That's the big question.
Absolutely.
And then it moves nicely into some of the statements made by Health Minister Zweli Mkhize earlier last week, where he said that the infection rate and the increase in the infection rate, or the low increase, might be quite almost like a misleading picture.
Yeah, the calm before the storm.
The calm before the storm is his words. And that this week will be a very trying week for us as a country, where the mass test screenings are set to be an important aspect of where we are now. Because at the moment, the health department is only able to do about 5,000 testings a day with 10 laboratories, right? So the idea is to get to about 20 to 30,000 tests a day. And this is where the questions are going to be asked in the coming week. Do we have the capacity to conduct that amount of tests? Because it's almost required that we do that level of testing, that intensive amount of testing, to be able to detect who's got the virus. Because remember, it's not easy anymore because of the local transmission.
Absolutely, and it's on that note that we'll have to leave it. Thank you very much for coming through. Always a pleasure. Zain, Semaar, helping us understand, of course, the important aspects to be tracking as the COVID-19 pandemic continues. Certainly appreciate your efforts.
Thank you.